Hi, I'm Carl Azus for CNN 10. We hope you're enjoying our show so far this season. In today's Down the Middle coverage, we're explaining a complicated and controversial subject concerning evictions in the United States. Under normal circumstances, people who rent their homes can be forced to leave. They can be evicted if they don't pay the rent they owe. But starting last year, as the COVID pandemic hit the U.S. economy, then President Donald Trump signed a law that, among other things, temporarily stopped evictions. One major argument for doing this was to allow renters to stay in their homes even if they couldn't afford their rent because they'd lost income due to the pandemic. But after that law expired, President Trump signed an executive order that gave the U.S. Centers for Disease Control the power to stop evictions. That was also meant to be temporary, but the order has been extended several times, and current U.S. President Joe Biden has continued extending it. But as we said, it's controversial. The Biden administration says the CDC has the power to take steps to prevent the spread of diseases like COVID-19, and it argues that allowing evictions could increase the spread of the virus because it could force renters to move in with other people or to become homeless. But property owners say this violates their rights to control the homes they rent out. In some cases, they say people who can pay rent are taking advantage of the law and refusing to pay it. And they add it's not fair or legal that some renters are allowed to live on someone else's property for free while the property owner is forced to pay the taxes, insurance, and maintenance on the home. So what do the courts say? They're all over the place. Some cases have been decided in favor of the government's eviction ban. Some have been decided against it. In early June, landlords asked the Supreme Court to effectively let the current eviction ban end. The Biden administration said the ban would on July 31st, and the Supreme Court decided not to end it early. But in August, the Biden administration extended the ban again, this time through early October, and all this is now back at the Supreme Court. An alliance of landlords and real estate groups is asking the High Court to end the current eviction ban. It argues that Congress never gave the CDC the power to stop evictions. The Biden administration argues that the ban needs to stay in place because the country is dealing with a historic public health emergency. How all this turns out for some renters and property owners hangs in the balance. 10-second trivia. The 16th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution concerns what subject? Voting rights, income taxes, presidential terms, or alcohol sales? The 16th Amendment gives Congress the power to collect income taxes without regard to census results. But census results do factor into the number of lawmakers each U.S. state has in the House of Representatives. The results of the 2020 U.S. Census came out earlier this year. The Census Bureau said they were delayed by the COVID pandemic and the challenges it created in collecting information. The big findings include the fact that the U.S. population is now greater than 331 million, but that population growth has slowed. The shifts in where people are living will affect how much money certain states will receive from the federal government. How will they affect representation in that government?
After months of waiting and delay, the U.S. Census Bureau finally released its count of the country's population in late April, and with it, the states that will gain and lose congressional seats over the next decade. Now, the decennial, big word, decade-long process of reallocating the 435 House districts among the 50 states using population growth and loss, which is also known as reapportionment, is the official kickoff of each state's redistricting process, in which the lines of each congressional seat are redrawn, this is my drawing, to deal with the census results. So here's the big news. The country's population grew from roughly 309 million in 2010 to 331 million in 2020. That's a 7.35% increase, which also is the slowest population growth since 1930 to 1940, the decade of the Great Depression. So if your state grew slower than 7.3%, you likely lost a seat in Congress. If it grew faster than that number, you probably gained a seat or two. So in that latter growth category are a half dozen states that will gain at least one new seat in 2022, with Texas the lone state, Lone Star, see what I did there, to gain 2 districts. On the losing seats end are a gaggle of states that are mostly centered in the upper Midwest. So I dug through the numbers, my shovel, to be honest, it was an act of total joy, I love this stuff, and came up with 5 things about the census count you will want to know to impress your friends and vanquish your enemies, which is our real goal in life, isn't it? Just me? Okay, let's go. Number one, the South and West continue to seize more and more population and congressional power. All 6 states gaining House seats, Texas, Florida, Colorado, Montana, Oregon, and North Carolina, are in the 2 regions of the country that we have seen grow fastest over the past 3 decades when looking back at demographic data from the 2000 census through the 2020 census. Since that 2000 census, for example, Texas has gained 8 seats, while Florida has gained 5, and Arizona and Georgia have picked up 3 each. In fact, of the 13 states that have gained seats in reapportionment since the 2000 census, all 13 of those states are in either the South or the Midwest. Yeah, it's a trend. Number 2, the Rust Belt continues to lose seats and power. So of the 7 states losing a district following the 2020 census, all but 2, California and New York, fall within the one-time manufacturing heart of this country. Pennsylvania has lost 4 seats since 2000, as has Ohio. Michigan is down 3, same with Illinois. The biggest loser of seats in the past 3 decades, however, is New York, having lost 5 seats. Here's an amazing New York stat. After the 1940 census, New York had 45 congressional districts. It'll have just 26 in 2022. Number 3, the electoral map didn't change all that much. Okay, so the expectation and most of the projections going into this reapportionment were that the electoral map would move in favor of Republicans because of major expected gains in Republican-friendly territory like Texas and Florida. But Texas gained only 2 seats and Florida just 1. In each case, a seat fewer than most politics watchers had predicted would happen. Number 4, the long California boom is no more. For much of the past 5 decades, California has been the population engine of the country. As Scott Wilson of the Washington Post noted in a terrific piece on the Golden State and its population in late April, quote, beginning in 1960, the state population grew by more than 30% each of the next 3 decades, a rate that peaked in the 1990 census, which found California's population had jumped 37% over the previous 10 years, end quote, which is remarkable growth. The state's congressional delegation, not surprisingly, also grew rapidly. It went from 30 seats in the 1950s to 52 seats just 4 decades later. But in the last 10 years, California's population grew by 6.1%, well below that national average I mentioned of 7.4%, which means, as I said, for the first time ever, California will lose a seat in Congress, dropping its literally massive delegation down to 52 members come 2022. That, of course, still makes California the largest single state delegation by a lot. Number 5, Texas is the new political superpower. Sure, Texas gained 2 seats as opposed to the 3 that most people had expected. But the addition means that the Lone Star State will have 38 House seats and 40 Electoral College votes, which begins to rival the ongoing might of California, 54 electoral votes in 2024. Okay, so 50,000-foot broad view. What the census numbers reveal is that the political realignment of the U.S., more power to the South and West and less of it for the Midwest and East, continued steadily over the last decade.
For sale, fake space dirt. You might be like, woo, I bet business is booming. Well, business is booming. A lab at the University of Central Florida mixes natural earth elements with chemical formulas. The idea is to create soil that's like that on Mars or asteroids. NASA, space companies, schools are all customers. They use the fake space dirt for research. The lab has shipped 25 tons of dirt this year. That's 5 times more than all of last year. And that's how to dish the dirt on a group that makes it. Wonder if they needed to put up 4 soil signs. Every business wants to be grounded in strong sales. They dig deep into research on how to do that. And while it's a dirty job, someone needs to mix it up so others can plant the seeds of new research. We are going to Summerville, South Carolina today. It's where we heard from Ashley Ridge High School in our YouTube channel. If you never want to miss a show, please subscribe to youtube.com/CNN10 and click that notification bell. I'm Coral Azus.